this week's Cat's Eye on the Future. First, I'd like to mention to my regular listeners that I'm sorry I've been away from the show for a couple of weeks. I've had kind of a few health issues that sort of got in my way of recording. I am doing better now, but I'm still tiring pretty easily and a bit under the weather, so this show may be a bit shorter than usual. But I didn't want to go another 3 weeks, a whole long time without doing any show at all. And especially because there's so much going on in the world of current events right now. I thought a fun and easy show might be to take a good look at what's going on according to the cards and the energies for, say, the next month or so. And maybe at least one important topic in the news. Also for fun, I did both card readings, and then I showed them to some of the other people at the WebBots Forum. Now, the WebBots Forum is a sister forum to the Time Monk Radio Network, where this Sept produces this show, and where I have kind of a little section in the room where I do card readings, and we talk about current events and do predictions and things. And I asked some of the other regular members for input, so we'd have some insights as well as my own on what people thought the cards and energies might mean. I won't be using any of their names here on the show, but I will be mentioning a few of their things that they thought and said as we go along, because I think they were very interesting. Okay, the first thing I decided to do was a general reading for the next month. These cards were actually laid out on September 9, 2014, but they're for a show being broadcast on Monday, September 16, 2014. These cards being what they are, it's entirely possible that some of these energies will already be going strong by the time this show actually airs on Monday. That's because this sort of card reading, well, it's better at dates than some forms of divination, such as dreams and intuition. Generally, sometimes they can be very vague on dates unless you maybe see a newspaper or hear a time or something. But these cards aren't nearly as specific as, say, astrology might be, where you can look and see exactly the way the planets are aligning on a certain day. So remember that the cards show us what energies are the strongest during certain time periods, and certain types of energies make certain types of events more or less likely during that time. And again, the time being a little bit fluid, you probably got a little time going into the period and a little time going out. But basically, it's around the time period I'm saying. And in this case, anyway, my friends on the WebBot Forum then had to use a combination of psychic intuition and educated guesses as to exactly how these energies may be playing out on the world stage. That's my friends on the WebBot Forum and me. In general, when I read these sorts of cards, and I've explained this before, they give you sort of a very, very basic energy pattern, and then you have to look in your own psychic senses to see what maybe does that mean. And that can include using, things that you already know may be going on, but it's kind of this interesting combination of stuff. But the energies are kind of all there, regardless of how we interpret them. And of course, these energies will also be affecting individuals. We've talked about this before. They affect individuals as well as worldwide current events. The thing is, we can do a lot more to encourage the good stuff or soften the effects of, say, a negative energy working on a personal level than we can on a worldwide one. But, we can also use these worldwide international readings that I'm doing, and in this case actually having help with a bit as well, to be sort of a heads up as to what may be coming down around the bend. Now, sometimes we can look in hindsight too and say, oh my goodness, the energy was manifesting as black and we didn't notice it at all beforehand. That's kind of, you kind of go, well, wow, why is that? Well, that's because we don't always, unless we get a specific psychic flash, something that's really a surprise, may sneak up on us. But usually if we go back and look at the cards, we'll find out the energy was there for something like that happening. We just didn't think about it ahead of time because it just wasn't really in a major focus. So anyway, I wanted to look about what these major energies were for both people's personal lives and current events for the next 4 weeks or so. And I did this by asking the question this way. Remember, I've talked about questions before, and it can change the energy a little bit how you ask the question. So I vary it a little bit. And in this time I asked, what are the most important energies coming up for the next 4 weeks or so, from September 16th, 2014 to October 15th, 2014. Now first, I'm just going to go over the cards and runes with a brief description so that we have this example. And I promise I will really try to have these cards and runes up at my website for the Cat's Eye Show. I know I've had a really hard time keeping up with that site, but we'll try to get them up there, and I will hopefully have a link to that at Time Monk Radio. In any case, I will describe them now so that everybody at home can sort of understand what I'm looking at. The first card I'm looking at is the Cave. The Cave is a human figure with a person in kind of a fetal position, and it's very gray and kind of purple and very dark. And the cave usually means depression or withdrawal. It can be going inward, this feeling that you want to hide and cover yourself with blankets. It's not always negative, but its primary meaning often is depression or a lack of joy, or it's the opposite of wanting to be out there and doing things. It's wanting to be withdrawn inside. Now this is followed by the Money card. And the Money card is a farmer going over his fields with hidden coins and treasure under the earth. And basically, money usually means exactly what it says. We have cash, monetary systems, economics, economies, especially currencies come in with the banking card, as well as things like, the Money card, as well as things like banking. It's very much the card of money, especially as either coins or cash or silver, that kind of thing. The next card is the Mother card. The Mother card is a woman with 3 children. She's holding them all close to her. She's very protective. She represents maternal energy, female figures, women leaders, and even things like mother-identified nations, like, Mother Russia, and she can also be like the goddess, like Gaia, or particularly mother-type goddesses like Frigg, or some of the other goddesses we associate with mothers and families and children. This is followed, interestingly enough, by the Message. The Message card makes other hearts stronger. It's like saying, this is the message. And in this case, I think it really highlights both the Mother card being an influence and the following card, which is from the Kitty Tarot deck, the Cat's Eye Tarot. And this is the 3 of Kitty Wands. The 3 of Kitty Wands shows shows a litter of 3 kittens, and one of them is obviously the leader, and he or she is jumping off the porch, leading the kittens off to new adventures. It's a very cute little kitten. And what the 3 of Kitty Wands represents is that kind of leadership, a strong leader, someone taking charge of things, and it also indicates a time to move forward. It's time to move, it's time to get off the porch, it's time to start doing things. So the message is something about the mother is emphasized, and also the fact that this is the time for leaders, for strong leadership. This is followed by the Kitty Justice card. The Kitty Justice card is a gray cat standing both in and out of the window. He has to make a decision which way the door is going to swing. It's very much like the Scales card in my other deck. It's your classic, the weighing the evidence to decide what's the best action. And justice, particularly in this deck, is about responsibility for action. So we have leadership, but we also have responsibility. And owning what somebody does, taking responsibility for it. It's also about the law courts. And just as the Kitty Wands is about the time to move forward, the Justice card is about its decision time. Time to make a choice. So, very interesting combination here. Finally, for the runes, we had the Volcano rune, which is the birch tree, birth, new cycle, new situation. And again, mother energy, Mother Earth, goddesses, very female energy oriented. And also very maternal, but also this sense of cycle, something new coming into being. And finally, we finish this out with Ansuj, the Ansuj rune, which is shaped kind of like a letter F. And this rune is usually translated mouth or communications. It's about all types of communication, communications equipment, things like the internet, phones, radios, talking, writing, books, everything like that. But Ansuj is also really closely associated with the god Odin. And Odin, we know, is sort of the god of strife and also of battles and conflicts. He's also very wise. He's the god of poetry and song and inspiration. He's got a lot of things going on here, but a lot of them involve communication, or could be the opposite, miscommunication. So, or misleading things, things not being quite as they appear. A really common form of Norse poetry was to present one thing described as if it were something else. So you get these kind of layers here. I'm stressing this on this rune because it actually is kind of complicated, and I think some of the energies right now for the next month are just that, kind of complicated. Okay, my basic first take on these combinations, though, is that the message means this is likely to be a time of economic, cash, or monetary depression, perhaps involving a feared, something people are worried about, or an actual economic crash happening during this period, or something people fear may be coming very soon. This probably has something to do with the sanctions against Russia, otherwise known as the motherland. But we can't discount the input of other female leaders. For example, Germany is a fatherland, but it's run by a mother, a patriotic mother, Angela Merkel, so there's a feminine influence there as well. In fact, since my overall September reading has a union as a major card, this was a reading that I did for another publication, and the cards that really stood out were union and destruction, which made me wonder at the time if this was going to have an effect, for example, on the EU or any unionized organization like that, unified country with the words united or union in them. I suspect that the situation and the sanctions on Russia may really be playing into these energies and possibly into this economic situation. We also have to consider the fact that Britannia, or Great Britain, is a female goddess as well as being the UK, and may be affected again. If that energy from the other reading that I'm only throwing in here because it's important, that I did for a local newspaper, which is about unions and destruction, I don't know that Scotland is going to vote for independence, but they have an independence vote next week. It will be happening very soon after this show airs. If they do vote for independence, that would again be a destruction of that particular union. And even if the vote is no, we have to say that the energy is there for perhaps it to be affecting things. And there's already been a drop in the pound sterling over that issue, and rumors are that not much thinking was done ahead of time as to what would happen if Scotland did vote to leave. Mainly probably because I think the powers in London didn't think they would dare. Either way, the situation is making things kind of dicey, and one thing world markets don't like is uncertainty. So even if next week they comes down to the wire and the Scots vote no and decide to stay part of the United Kingdom, it still could have this kind of knock-on effect to the currencies, and if they do vote for independence, it could really have a knock-on effect, at least temporarily. Now, a number of people from the Webbots forum pointed out also that this is a likely time for economic collapse, or at least they thought severe changes, with one person actually suggesting, I love this image, the cave as the mother of all money caves, as in things caving, which is a pretty good way of looking at it, this idea of things sort of caving in and falling, and people sort of, going inward to protect themselves. I thought that was very interesting. Several other people suggested the Three of Wands was important, and that it might either be about 3 currencies or 3 female leaders. as well as perhaps, and they suggested, like the BRICS countries, such as Brazil and India, being involved in these things. It was also noted that Argentina, whose default played havoc with the world's economy a few years ago when it defaulted, and I think it either has or maybe about to default again, is also headed by a woman. So we have, again, that female power. Therefore, she may be playing a role along with the whole Angela Merkel or perhaps the Mother Russia paradigm. Another person actually suggested that the three countries with the Three of Wands might be Mother Russia, Mother India, and Mother Britannia, which was, another way of looking at it. Finally, one forum member felt really strongly that the Three Wands were three nations, that they were about to play an important role in the upcoming time period, and listed them as specifically Germany, Russia, and China. They also felt this was connected to the BRICS, that's the Brazil, India, the new emerging powers, idea of having a new currency or trade or reserve currency in some way. I did not catch this, but when I read this, I thought it was interesting enough to underline it and bold it, because that's the kind of psychic flash you're looking for, and I would really pay attention to what goes on between Germany, Russia, and China, and especially I think probably Brazil and India over the next 4 weeks, particularly in terms of new forms of economic connection and possibly ways of paying bills. For example, deciding to use a different currency than the dollar, or perhaps even the creation of something. Again, this may not all happen during these 4 weeks, but I think these energies are important during these 4 weeks. I think they'll be affected. Moving along, the strong leadership of the Three Wands, along with the Justice card, suggests a need for strong leadership and a willingness to take responsibility for actions during this period. My first thought when I saw this was, of course, of Putin. He's been around a lot in Russia. But I think it's going to splash over into other places. This is where there is a need for, but we'll see if countries like the EU and China and the US are able to live up to this. For example, is Obama or would the Prime Minister of England be able to actually stand up and do things? Or will this energy kind of get inverted into a kind of unstable leadership? Because remember, all these energies have both the positive and negative potentials within them. So will you have strong leadership, or will you have unstable leadership and lack of being responsible? I don't know, but I think that kind of tension is going to be going on a lot in the next 4 weeks. This could, of course, also spill over into the general realm this time with, individuals who really need to take charge and be responsible for their destinies do so, and some don't. I think we're going to see some real need to step up to the plate, and some people may surprise us and actually, step up and do things when we thought they wouldn't, and other people we thought were really, just really going to be there and do their thing. They may just kind of step aside from history. Again, here the forum members really took this to heart, and they felt really drawn to the feminine mother energies that seem connected to this leadership pattern. I didn't get that as strongly at first, but again, I think they're really onto something. One got the impression of women's work being in the cave. In the old days, that's where women did their work. And that's kind of, they kind of stayed home, but they're what made the cave run. They're what made things smooth. They were what kept kind of everybody alive and going. So, again, this card kind of suggests women working in their home places or perhaps their countries to bring about the things that need to happen, and possibly even to sort out this economic crisis or social depression. We'll get a little bit more on that later, but I just keep that in mind for now. And at least one member felt strongly that the Three of Wands again was a female energy of some sort. And as I mentioned, either the 3 female leaders or perhaps just 3 female influence of some type. But again, very much that this was a feminine reading. Passing on further, we get to the Volcano rune. And again, this birth rune suggests something new or a new situation being born. But again, it harkens back to that mother, strong woman, goddess energy that we had before. And the Ansu's rune in this reading is then a bit spooky, because it handles communication, but also miscommunication, which is everything from a chat over a cup of coffee to the entire world internet and grid system. I mean, it's like every type of communication you can imagine. As I mentioned before, it's also about the god Odin, whose enjoyment of battles, strife, and just general chaos is often missed in his more all-father, wise portrayals by Marvel Comics. Odin just plain out likes war. It helps him to gain heroes, and it keeps everyone in Asgard, especially Odin, from getting bored. And while there usually is a point to the conflicts in the long overall pattern of the 9 worlds he oversees, and he instigates it for reasons of his own, it can often be a very long and painful process for humans to see or understand what those purposes are. In other words, it's like very far from us in that sense, so that it may not always make sense what Odin may be up to. This is why this rune is a little bit spooky here. Taken all together, these next 4 weeks look like a time when leadership and responsibility, or the lack of it, like I said, are really going to play some pivotal roles here, at least in the human-directed events of the next 4 weeks. Well, male leaders are likely to be doing part of this. What's very interesting about this time period is the strong influence that women and female leaders may have in terms of what decisions are made and what sorts of responsibility is or is not taken. Also, muddying the waters a bit, as if it needed any more, is that nationals or places, nations, or places associated with women or mothers are also likely to play a large role in this. Themes such as Mother Russia, Britannia, Mother India, etc., which are going to be important, which doesn't let more male-identified places off the hook. As I mentioned before, Germany may be the fatherland, but the current head of state is Angela Merkel, who's essentially the mother of her country for the moment. And by extension, to some degree, she's the mother of the EU, because the EU often comes up in readings as sort of greater Germany. That's kind of an aside here, but it may have an important role to play in some of what's going on. And while the message card makes it clear we need to pay careful attention to this, mother, female, leadership, responsibility, justice theme, we can't totally ignore that other message of the Ansu's rune either. And as I said before, Ansu's is really complex, as it usually translates as communications, but it has such long associations with Odin. And I mentioned his strife stirring and stuff. We cannot ignore, war as, possibly resulting from a combination of monetary woe or miscommunication. Lots of wars get started over a combination of one or the other, or often both. Again, doesn't mean there's going to be a big war in the next 4 weeks, but it does mean the energies are there for the kind of miscommunications that can really start piling up before one starts. But even more importantly, with the Depression card coming first, and followed by money, the potential for economic collapse, or things that people are very worried about collapsing, is there of the sort that can also cause war and strife. Also, I highly suspect that communications of all sorts from the internet, especially, it's going to play a big role in the next few weeks. Not just the internet specifically, but also all kinds of communication grids are likely to be in the news and maybe interrupted in some way, or maybe confused in some way. I don't quite have my handle on this. I'm not going to say a solar flare is going to hit and satellites are going to go out. It could, but the energy is there for something like that. Not everything is bad, of course, because the same kind of cards, I have to say, could indicate some amazing or interesting new discovery in the field of communications technology. And the birth rune actually suggests that something new coming on to seem like that would not be unusual at all. So that's something positive to look for. The Volcano rune also suggests that the next 4 weeks are partly, when we talk about terms of energy cycles, while there's a continuation of an older cycle going on, it's also very likely that a new phase cycle is starting to warm up. So I think we're in kind of a period of transition. That may be why things are kind of so active right now, because you do have this kind of, one thing is kind of rolling away and another is sort of rolling into being. My hunch is that as a result of the cave, money, and mother combination sort of smashing into the responsibility and judgment energies, we're likely to see the world, or at least the world of macroeconomics, experience some real serious changes. As I said, that depression money card, this feels at least as significant as what happened in October 2008, but it may only be starting during these 4 weeks, and it may be ongoing for a few months into the fall until the dust settles. But look for the signs of it beginning, or starting the ball to start rolling now. And if I am correct in this interpretation, I get back to the image of the mothers. Remember, I said we'll come back here. Mothers, this time, though, as a symbol for women with children and households to run, going into the cave in terms of their money and their spending. On an individual level, mothers may start making some very hard choices about what they need to take care of their families and what they don't need. And they may very well also communicate their displeasure if they suddenly find that it's very difficult for them to get the things their family needs. But you'll also have this kind of further tightening on the reins with spending, as they say. I saw recently an article where it said Americans are now hoarding money, which used to be called saving. Well, you're going to see even more of this, and some of it may be kind of enforced, and some of it will be just self-intentionalized by mothers taking care of the tasks of the cave first and worrying about things outside the cave later. Also, if I'm reading this energy correctly, despite a whole lot of outward, fast-moving energy on the macro level, on the personal level, people are going to react to current events by, as I said in the beginning, wanting to hide their caves and take care of what they can. Mommies first, but everybody else as well. Saving their spending money, and also their sort of emotional energy, if they have any left over. And generally just hoping that the larger events don't come knocking at their personal door. People will look at places like the Ukraine or West Africa or places, or the Middle East, and think, I'm so glad I'm not there. It's just going to be this kind of, too bad, so sad, I can't deal. It's not necessarily a good or positive reaction, but is a very human one. And sometimes it's the only real viable one we can make, because we really ultimately can only take care of what's in front of us. Now, for my listeners, as part of taking care of that, you can use this energy tendencies in a positive way for your own personal caves, hearth, home, and even bank accounts. As one forum member said, another forum he's on, which is full of economic geeks, suggested now was a very good time to try to always have a bit of extra cash around your house in case the bank or the ATM fails suddenly. In other words, the prediction wasn't necessarily for a long-term total collapse of everything, but this might be a good time to keep some extra cash around, keep some water around, keep a bit of food around, and be real situationally aware of things that you need, just in case things get a little wonky outside the front door. This sort of thinking never hurts. You could just put the cash in an envelope or pretend it isn't there if you're worried about spending it. I would be. That's why I'll write something on it like, do not use. Just put it away. But it's really might be important right now to just have that there. And then, you can just budget it for next month if everything goes well. But I just think the next few months in general is going to be a time you always want to keep, depending on your budget, at least enough around that you can, get through the tasks for the next few days if you can't get any more money out. That's just kind of a heads up, and not just from me, but also from someone on the forum I'm using, and a economics forum they're also on. The mother card now, in terms of personal readings, makes this a particularly great time for mothers and anything motherly. That includes anything from making and having babies to spending time with children, mentoring young people, people who work in nurturing professions like teaching or nursing, daycare workers, any social workers, anything where people were taking care of people. This is a good month for that. And I guess it's going to be we need some real mother nurturing energy influences, because a lot of what's been happening lately is kind of very domineering and kind of, not very nurturing. And so this kind of potential is very, very good, and we can all work on this. You don't have to be female even, to bring this out in yourself. It's this type of energy that protects and cares for those who we love and who may or may not be able to take care of themselves. Finally, the Ansu's energy can be used by individuals to meditate on and put towards encouraging good communications and applying good and sound leadership skills. Remember, this is a time period when responsible decision making and then being willing to stand by your decisions, and you may even have to take a leadership role sometimes, it's going to be really important, and concentrating on that beforehand, because what's happening on the macro level is likely to happen again in the smaller level of our personal lives, not smaller to us, but in miniature. So we may be called upon to make these kind of decisions or stand our ground, or sort of explain ourselves to make proper judgment. And that's going to need to take some time for some clear thinking. This is not a time, there are times when you can just kind of drift through life and kind of let things happen to you. This is not one of those 4-week periods. This 4-week period is a time when you really want to stop and try to get things done in a way in which you are thinking forward, and thinking responsibly, and really paying attention to what you're doing. It's a period of time to speak clearly and plainly about what you mean, because there's going to be a tendency for things just to get lost in translation. So again, be clear. All in all, this is a time period for being a mature adult. Let's just put it that way. None that we stop the child within or anything, but in terms of our overall macro decisions, we just need to have some maturity, and we can do that in a friendly and joyful manner, but we can't just sort of slide by the way we can part of the time. We might want to at the same time, use some of that childlikeness by making popcorn and simply watching world events unfold on the television and keep a scorecard, because there's really nothing we can do about the outside events other than make popcorn and watch things and go, whee, that's just another thing happen. But at home, try to concentrate, and using wisdom and being a mature adult. There'll be a time to play later. This isn't it. Okay, I think that pretty much sums up the next 4 weeks energy-wise, which is, this kind of, it's not a bad 4 weeks, but it's maybe a kind of profound 4 weeks, especially if that economic stuff really starts to go off. I mean, I hope I'm wrong on that, and that, the depression money may just be kind of an economic thing that, well, if you're a currency trader, it really upsets you, but normal people don't get affected. But looking at some of the other cards, it looks like, if not this month, there will eventually be a knock-on effect to everybody. And I think it's more likely to be sooner or later. So just being prepared and having as many ducks in a row as you can, and then just kind of relax. And, again, just make popcorn. Okay, so that's kind of this month. When we come back from the break, we'll be taking a quick look at a more specific reading I did about the volcanoes in Iceland. You have been listening to part 1 of Cat's Eye on the Future. We'll return to the show right after these short messages. Do you have questions? The cards have answers. If you would like a personal reading with Melody, just go to my website, melodipsychicreadings.com. That's Melody with an I, psychicreadings.com, for information, or email me at melodyreader@gmail.com.
Readings are available using Skype, phone, email, or even in person if you are lucky to live in Ireland. Why not find out what special messages the cards have just for you and book a private reading today? We now return to part 2 of Cat's Eye on the Future. Welcome back! And for the second part of the show, I thought I'd do a specific reading about current events. You know, honestly, I tried first to do a reading on the vote for Scottish independence I talked about in the first part of the show, but the cards I got were so jumbled, mixed up, and all over the map that I couldn't make heads or tails out of them. Now, my suspicion is that because this is a very tightly strung human event, one with very powerful emotions on all sides, and one where people are still actively changing their opinions probably from minute to minute, that the outcome just plain hasn't been decided yet. I do know that from that reading I mentioned earlier for the other venue, at the start of September, there's at least some energy for destruction and union going on this month, which is a sign that there's the energy potential for unions of all sorts to be disrupted or destroyed, and that would include possibly the United Kingdom, which will become destroyed in its current form if the Scots vote for independence. That doesn't mean they will, but that does mean that the energy potential is there for them to do so. So it's a little bit pushing that way, but I think it's just so close that, people will ultimately make this decision. So after really trying to deal something with a confusing muck, I decided to pick a totally different topic and a different type of topic and read about the sort of thing that humans have no control over. Humans can control how they respond to these sorts of things, but they are actually powerless to do anything about them directly. And this particular case, I picked a volcanic eruption because people can study volcanic eruptions. They can try to get out of the way of volcanic eruptions, but they really, at this point, we have no control over starting or stopping them. Now, this reading has a backstory. It's a bit of a story. It seems that years ago, about 1,000 or so, when the Norse first went from Norway to Iceland, they brought their family spirits with them. Some of these were family, ancestors, and some of them were Ettins, which are like giants or natural forces, some of which, are friendly to people, some of which are not. Some of them was kind of there, but they followed the people with them. Now, one of those spirits that chose to migrate from Norway to Iceland was a rather nice family spirit, apparently named Bardar. Now, a few years after his family moved to Iceland, Bardar, being a powerful spirit being, decided to take up residence in a local volcano. This was a nice home for him, not too far from the family farm, so he could kind of watch over things. But it had a bit of privacy, too, so he didn't have to deal with everything at the farmstead every day. He kind of needed some privacy because, the volcano became called in Old Norse Bardarbunga, which politely means Bardar's Bulge. The Norse were particularly open people and not shy of bodily functions. And let's just say that Bardar's Bulge probably resulted from every so often him having a bit of cosmic Viagra and throwing a party of sorts. The sort of party that, tends to result in a volcanic eruption. Now, the last few weeks, Bardar obviously woke up and decided it was party time again. So I decided to do a rune and card reading to see if it can give us any insight into what Bardar's plans were for the next while. Is he going to continue to party? Is he likely to invite his friends? Is it likely to go on for the entire weekend, for a few months, whatever? In any case, this is how I decided to ask the question, and we'll see what came up. What do the cards see as the most likely energies around the eruption of the Bardarbunga volcano in Iceland for the next 4 to 6 weeks here in 2014? Well, again, I'll go over the cards first. The first one is the Stars, which is a card with stars all over it and lines, constellations. It's about connections, space, things coming together. Then we have the Now card. The Now card is this lovely card, a farmer reaping his harvest, the sun is shining. It's a great card for fall, and it's also a card marking the time as now. And again, it's got some solar issues on it. Remember the sun issue. That's because the next card is the Sun, which is, again, a beautiful card of the sun shining, people dancing, more of that same wheat field, and just generally it's a sense of celebration, but it's also the sun in the sky. It's like all things solar, including including nuclear stuff, solar flares, celebration, things being brought to the light that have been hidden. And it can also be a star, because remember, the sun is also our star. So we have the stars and the sun together. Then we have the Beast card. The Beast card is a picture of this kind of red, fiery dragon with his mouth open, coming out through a crack in the door in the hallway. And he represents deep, dark, raising emotions like jealousy, anger, rage. He's sort of the beast within everybody. Or perhaps in this case, the lava within the eruptive power of the volcano. Because, Bardar may be having a bad day and be kind of angry, but it's just kind of, I just get this image, and you can see why. Again, normally these cards are being read for people, not mountaintops, but I think in the mountain contest, the beast is probably the lava. Then we have the Six of Kitty Swords, which is the kitty in a cat carrier getting ready to go to the vet, and she's not even trying to get out of the cat carrier. She doesn't feel well. This is about depression, recovery, travel. She's not trying to get out of the cat carrier. She doesn't feel well, or as I said, the volcano is likely to cause some disruptions in travel, and perhaps the economy before things eventually recover. I think that's how we could read that one here. And the Knight of Kitty Cups is a cute little black and white kitten that's sort of come here, come here, come here, go away, go away, go away. And he's a sensitive or romantic being given to mood swings of highs and lows. He's unpredictable. He can be charming, but he goes hot and cold. Or, as I thought, Bardar the Etten, or Giant Lord, feels alternately lively, and then he lays low again. The sort of on-again, off-again eruptions that we've seen in the past for the past couple of weeks and are probably set to continue. Once again, we have the Volcano rune, which we went over in great detail in the first half of the show. It's repeating here, which is interesting because it then shows that not only does the next few weeks have the Volcano rune for the whole situation of the world, it's also affecting Iceland and is very powerful in Iceland for this volcano itself. So here we have birth, Mother Earth, Mother Goddess, or sometimes the two mountains, because Volcano is a bee with the two mountain peaks. And I think this is partly about the possibility of new eruptions, new stages of eruption, possibly new calderas or new openings, new fissures, and maybe multiple volcanoes ultimately going off. In other words, is Bardar inviting his friends to the party? We're not sure, but we know that Mother Earth is building and destroying and giving birth to new land in Iceland, so it's all very epic and powerful and very cosmic in that way. Navi is just the final rune, and that's Need Fire. That's the two sticks rubbed together when you don't have any other way and you're desperate. The oldest primordial form of fire. It means sort of desperation, great need, a need for rescue. It suggests that this is either about the deep fires within the earth that simply need to get out, which is what I think partly is that beast needs to escape. And there's also likely to be some truly desperate situations ultimately caused by this eruption. I get the feeling that there's a possibility for people needing rescue. Now, this could just be tourists that they've already taken some people and arrested them for getting too close. Or this could be something occurs where it isn't quite expected, and people have to be gone out of the area. There is some danger here, I feel. But to summarize up, it's likely that this eruption is going to continue for at least the next 4 to 6 weeks. And I think it's likely to expand to include more than one volcano, or at least more than one venting system. Bardabunga has like the one main caldera, which hasn't even gone off yet, and it keeps opening in all these vents, and I think that's going to continue. To some degree, as I said, that's already happened, but the stars card and the two peaks of the Volcano rune together really suggests to me that this trend's going to continue. That stars card, especially with the things connecting together. We might also even see other volcanoes in a system that we're not quite sure how they're linked may go off as well, but that's a little more distant. More activity is likely soon, because the now card, meaning it's now rather than later, and at some point the beast is going to need to escape with a roar and probably provide us with a really explosive eruption. This is why I think there's going to be at least one really big blam. This eruption is likely to cause some desperate situations for humans on the ground, perhaps even some needing rescues, and I think travel will be affected at that point, and possibly some economies as well. If it isn't before, when that one really big eruption happens, it's likely to cause problems. Since the Six of Swords can also be about not feeling well, the eruption may also have health consequences for some people. In addition to that likely explosion, or possibly series of explosions, of the caldera or the volcano itself, it looks likely for a good while yet that Bardar may be having off and on again smaller eruptions, and these fissure eruptions for the next 6 weeks or longer. Sometimes it may appear to stop and then start again, sort of like it's already been doing. This kind of, geologists in Iceland announce eruption is over next day. Bardar laughs as the geologist of Iceland, and it starts again. At this point, no one really knows, but the cards indicate really strongly that it's going to keep up this kind of up and down for a while. So my best guess from both a psychic and as a moderately educated layperson on geology is that the currently sinking caldera on top of the actual volcano, which I need to explain, geologists have been saying for the last week or two, the actual volcano of Bardabunga has been going down and down and down at the center of where the little crater is. And that is a suggestion that the lava may be getting ready to, the pressure may be building to getting ready to eject it outwards. It hasn't actually done that. It's sort of come out the sides, sort of like if you have a milk bottle and it splits on the sides rather than coming out the top of the Coke can or the milk bottle. But this is actually at the top. And so I think that the currently sinking caldera at the top of Bardabunga is a sign of an impending explosive eruption. And the card suggests this is likely to occur very soon if it's going to happen, possibly in conjunction or near the same time with other volcanoes, or perhaps just an expansion of the current fissure eruptions. In other words, you might have, the top of the volcano going off, as well as the size getting worse for a while. But I really do wonder if, there might be some other volcanoes involved here. It's just really hard to tell. This explosive eruption, if it occurs, will cause delays and problems for at least a few days and weeks, depending on how long it goes on. I think air travel will be affected this time, no matter how much the airlines would rather keep flying. I know they have put in all kinds of things to try to avoid what happened last time, where everything just shut down for a week. But I think that this is, at least temporarily, this is going to be enough that a lot of air travel will be affected, at least over the North Atlantic. For how long, it depends on how long it keeps going. At the same time, this feels like a large event, but not a super volcanic event. I mean, Rounder 1 is going to affect the world in Iceland for a while until it dies down, but we're not talking like, Mount Tambora going off or something, I don't think. I think it's important. It will be noticed. It will possibly even play in a bit to that economic crisis. It'll be one more thing that might play into it a bit, but it's important, but it's not the end of the world. The sun card suggests that worldwide weather may be affected, particularly sunshine and particularly sunsets. Volcanoes tend to make really nice sunsets. And we might have some rather beastly weather, especially if the volcano is enough to make things cold for a year or two, or possibly play into an overall already going to be severe weather. Harvests may even be affected in some places, given the hardest imagery on those cards. this time, the folks at the Timebot forum seemed more or less in sync with my overall reading. And for the most part, people just kind of, went along with what I suggested, although several felt very strongly drawn towards the sun or that sun-star combination, which is why I mentioned it so much earlier. They felt it was very connected with the volcano. Several people saw this as potential for the solar weather or sunspots or storms affecting and possibly encouraging the eruption, which there's been some scientific work done recently on possible connection. So the jury is still out on that, but it wouldn't surprise me at all if things like the X-class flares going on right now, while I'm actually reading, might be able to affect things like volcanic eruptions, and people had that feeling. Other people saw it more as a potential volcanic effect on the sun from the weather disturbances caused by the eruption itself. In other words, dust making it difficult for the sun to get through, the weather possibly getting colder, or that sort of thing. One person also felt very strongly that the cards were indicating that Bardar was really likely to sort of wax off and on, the same thing I mentioned in my reading, and probably for quite a long period of time. May not even have one large stable eruption and getting it over with, but might just keep going on and off and on and off and on and off. So that's a potential too. They're both possible in the reading, although I still think there's a high potential for a larger eruption within this kind of overall off and on pattern. Well, we'll see. As always, timing is the hardest part on this sort of reading, and I asked for 4 to 6 weeks, but I still won't relax totally and call this one a miss unless Bardar suddenly shuts off and is quiet for a few months at least. So, even if nothing happens in the next 4 to 6 weeks, that is like a extreme reluctance, unless the volcano just really stops and goes quiet again. I would pay attention to this volcano at least through December. I think there's some potentials there. But like I said, we'll have to see. Volcanoes have been known to laugh at humans before. And I gather that Bardar had the kind of reputation of being a sort of, nice guy who really liked a good joke. So we'll see. But, all kidding aside, I think the volcano has the potential to be disruptive. If you're in Iceland, obviously to pay attention. And this volcano is in a national park of some sort, so it's not where people live anymore. So its potential for disruption, I think, has to do more on a grander scale of things, except for scientists and people who might be, unfortunately, in the area if something were to happen unexpectedly. But I just would suggest that people, keep your eyes open, pay attention, and, possibly be ready to have your travel disrupted if you're planning on going across the North Atlantic in the next few weeks, because there is that potential for that. But we'll hope not. In any case, I think that was kind of fun. We should know in a few weeks whether or not this actually happened, and we can go back and give it a 5 stars, or we can give it a gong if it's a total miss. That's kind of the fun of this sort of reading. And we'll probably try to do that. I'll probably try to do that in the December or January show where we go over the year before. And I hope you've enjoyed this show. I've enjoyed getting back to my listeners. I missed everybody. And I look forward to continuing from now on. And I'm not sure what the show will be next week, if it's going to be an interview or if it may be another one of my topical shows or something. I need to get together and try to get some people on for interviews and things, and that takes a little bit to arrange. I am starting to work on that, never fear. But meanwhile, one way or another, hopefully I will see you soon, next time, at Cat's Eye on the Future. You have been listening to Cat's Eye on the Future, the show where we take a look at what's coming up in your world and your future. Join us again next time for another episode of Cat's Eye on the Future.